Happy Sunday, my magnificently magical manifesting friends. I feel like every single time I say it, I add some M word. So by the time we get to the end of this 30 days, I'm sure it's going to be 26 letters long. Hi, thank you so much for coming back. If you have been tuning in for the whole week, then you have been, in for a lot. We started talking about signs of spiritual awakening. We've talked a little bit about how to become a conscious creator in your life. We've talked about how leaving religion actually brought me closer to God. And so today I just wanted to take a moment. I posted on my page earlier and it started quite the discussion. I asked how you can tell the difference between your intuition, divine messages or divine guidance, and your ego. And so I just wanted to come on and give you my take and how I can tell the difference for myself, and a few key pieces that kind of tell the distinction between the three. They're not necessarily bad. None of them are. The key is making sure that you have it in balance. So if you don't know me, hello. My name is Benir Pierre. I'm an intuitive life coach, master manifester, and the secret weapon that every boss needs. I teach leaders to apply the principles of abundance to live and create a fearless and intentional lifestyle. So thank you again for joining me. Today, we are talking about what is the difference between divine messages, your intuition, and ego. So first, I want to start with saying that a lot of people think that ego is a bad thing and that ego is something that you should get rid of. And I disagree. Ego is not bad. And when we talk about ego, I'm really speaking about, Freudian, id, ego, superego. So when we talk about ego, really your ego is just your protection. Your ego is your natural protection and self-preservation. And so the key is to make sure that you have all of them in balance. So let's start with ego. The purpose of the ego, again, is self-protection. It's to make sure that you don't do something that's going to embarrass yourself, something that's going to negatively affect you. It also is your motivator. And so it makes sure that you are the best that you possibly can be. Now, what happens sometimes when the ego is unbalanced, when your ego is inflated, then sometimes that can look like feeling like you are better than other people. Because just because you're the best that you can be doesn't necessarily mean that you're better than anyone. We, all have our strengths, right? And so when your ego is inflated, then sometimes that looks like coming off as cocky or narcissistic or whatever. When your ego is deflated, when you have low self-esteem, then that's when the messages come through that you're not as good as other people. And the funny thing is that it still is all a comparison. So that's what your ego does. Your ego, sorry, I'm getting a glare from the light. My apologies. So your ego is basically the way that you see yourself and the way that others see you, and it's preserving that. It also, again, is very protective, even though not quite in the same way that your intuition may be, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but it also protects you. A lot of times protects you from yourself and protects you from other people. Another thing about the ego is that it really is focused on your individual needs. So the ego isn't really concerned about what other people may need or the greater good. The ego is simply concerned with your individual needs and getting what you need. So, if you're hungry, then an ego response would be to grab your plate first, as opposed to, letting other people eat first. So, that's kind of what the role of the ego is to make sure that you're good. Because at the end of the day, self-preservation is like probably our first instinct, that actually before the ego develops, before superego, any of that, our id, which is that natural getting your needs and desires met. Kind of like your intuition, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But it is making sure that you have what you need. And so, that is that desire, that instinct is developed before anything else, any personality is developed. And so your ego is just making sure that you are good, that you are taken care of. Ego is a root chakra. I can't really say emotion. It's connected with your root chakra. And so that's where that comes from. So again, that sense of security, that sense of protection, and making sure that you're good. It also has a little bit to do with your morals, in the sense that it's the way that you perceive yourself and the way that others perceive you. So again, ego, it just is what it is. It isn't something that's good or bad. Now, when it becomes bad, it's when it's out of balance. So you have to make sure that you keep your ego balanced with your intuition, balanced with divine messages, balanced with your spirit, and that you keep it in check. But the ego is not necessarily inherently good or bad. So the next thing is your intuition. With your intuition, that is more an inner knowing. So intuition is concerned with self-protection. Intuition for me is almost like a feeling center. So I definitely feel that in my sacral chakra. So kind of like that gut knowing. Intuition is focused on what's happening immediately. Same thing with ego. Ego is more concerned with the short-term results. So intuition is looking at what's happening immediately. It's almost that fight or flight. And so it's giving you what you need to make sure that you are safe right now. So of course, we all have experience with our intuition. Sometimes that can be telling you not to go into a certain place. Sometimes it can be directing you to go, somewhere that may give you an opportunity that you need. So sometimes the intuition isn't just about protecting us. Sometimes it's ushering us into our next level of greatness. However, it's always about the immediate, what to do right now. The intuition, it's this inner knowing. And the problem comes when we ignore our intuition. And so a lot of times you may have found yourself in situations that you knew you shouldn't have done in the first place, even though we know that should is a 4-letter word. And I've talked about that in previous videos. So there is no judgment, but you already felt it that if you were to take that course of action, it would end negatively for you. And so that's the role of the intuition, is to be that feeling center, that gut punch that lets you know right now, don't do this. And so for me, with my intuition, it often is something that is, so with divine messages for me, it's very clear, and I know that it's not from me, but I know that it's for my greater good. With intuition, it's this feeling that unless I listen to it and follow it, there's an anxiety that goes with it until I listen to my intuition. So whereas, divine messages you may get several reminders telling you to do that. For me, when it's my intuition, it doesn't let me go until I listen. With the intuition, again, that is connected with your sacral chakra. Again, it's giving you that fight or flight, that stress response. With divine messages, and this is one where I feel a lot of people mistake divine messages with their ego, because, they do something and it's like, well, God told me to do it. And the problem is often they're not familiar with the voice of God. And when I say the voice of God, really that is simply not familiar with connecting with their spiritual center. And so it's just like, well, I felt that way, And so I'm just going to say God told me to do it. And so for me, one of the key differences, when it's a divine message, again, it's very clear. However, often it's subtle. So it's something that requires me to be still to receive. It requires me to get my ego in check to receive. And often when it's a message that comes from my spiritual center, or that comes from my spirit guides, my ancestors, from God, my higher self, often it stings my intuition just a little bit. And it doesn't, normally when it's my ego, it feels good. And it's telling me, girl, you are the bomb. You got this together. And sometimes, again, when it's a little deflated, sometimes it's saying, girl, you don't know what you're doing at all. Why are you doing this? Why do you think you can do this? So when it's my spirit, then often it's, you've known this all along. You know how to do this. Simply listen, get still. Sometimes it's be quiet. Stop talking so much. Which my ego never ever tells me. My ego tells me to grab that microphone and stand up loud. But sometimes when it's a divine message, it's telling me that, get quiet and stop speaking so much. Stop worrying about how other people see you. So often when it's coming from my spirit, then it doesn't feel so great to my ego, which often lets me know, normally it's checking me about the way that I have been handling things. And so, sometimes it's telling me that instead of allowing someone to shift my energy, I need to become peace so much that they feel the peace from me and receive that peace. And that's not something that my ego wants to hear. My ego wants to hear that, yes, girl, you can, go ahead and give that side eye and you can roll your neck, So it's very important to recognize that when it's something coming from spirit, it's something that's for your greater good, and where your ego is concerned with self-preservation and individual needs. When it's coming from spirit, it's concerned with balance and the greater good of all. And it doesn't really care about how you feel about it if it's something that needs to be adjusted so that the greater good is served and so that your purpose is served. Often when it's a message from spirit, I receive confirmation numerous times. And I will say that, normally now I don't need the confirmation as much because I know that I have to listen. And so it's something that, after I sit with it and finally get okay with it, once my ego stops having a temper tantrum and I decide that, I have to be obedient, I don't need the confirmation as much, but as I start to walk in that direction, the doors open and it naturally aligns. So with your ego, when it's coming from a place of ego, sometimes it aligns, sometimes it doesn't. But when it's coming from spiritual messages and it's divine, it's God, it's your ancestors, however you receive your messages, even if you're using tools of divination. So however you're receiving your messages, if it is in fact an honest message, then it's something that will come true. And whether that coming true is right now or 10 years from now, things align to make it happen. And I will take just a moment and mention that, we have to trust the process. So some things that may seem like they are not aligning and it seems like everything is falling apart, sometimes that's the way that things align to make it happen. So if you've been praying for more time to focus on your business and all of a sudden you get laid off, that may be the alignment that you've been seeking. So it is important to trust the process. But for the most part, when it's coming from spirit, things happen the way that they should, and it doesn't take a lot of effort from you. And so it's really important in manifestation to make sure that you are allowing spirit to guide you and not your ego. And when it's spirit guiding you, and spirit, sorry, I gave you all the chakras for the rest of them. So spirit is your crown chakra. So when you are being led by your crown chakra and by your third eye, so when you are looking with your spiritual eye and not your natural eyes, then you're able to recognize those gentle nudges that lead you in the direction of your greater purpose, that lead you in the direction of what you've been seeking, what you've been trying to manifest. So as a recap, with your ego, it's focused on you. It simply is focused on what you need and what you want and what's going to make you feel good. The ego is focused on preserving your image for other people. The ego often is focused on how other people feel about you. And so, again, like I said, the ego isn't necessarily a good or bad thing, but if there's a situation, for example, someone on Facebook unfriends you, which is such a ridiculously petty thing, but it happens all the time and people get in their feelings. So I'm going to talk about it. So someone on Facebook unfriends you. The ego response is to make it about yourself or to make it about them. So either, oh, she must be a hater, so that's why she deleted me. Or something must be wrong with me, so that's why she deleted me. Both of those are ego responses. Whereas if it's something that is coming from your higher self, it's understanding that this person is probably going through their own journey that has nothing to do with you. And so it's a non-factor for you. And so the thing is, she may have a problem with you. She may be a hater, all of those things. But how does that serve your greater purpose? How does that serve your greater good for you to try to figure out why she may have done something? So it's important to make sure that we are being led by spirit so that we're putting ourselves in the space to receive. If you are letting ego drive you, often that's a very low vibrational. So, again, your ego is based in your root chakra. And so that's a very low vibration area versus your crown chakra, which is high vibration. And so when you're being led by spirit, you have high vibrations, you're able to attract easily, versus when you're being led by ego, things are harder. You have to work harder. You have to do more. So I hope that this video encouraged you to connect with your spiritual self and find that balance, because you can't be led by spirit without being grounded in reality. But at the same time, you can't be stuck in reality and led by ego and not be directed by spirit. So it's very important to find that balance. And so I hope that this encouraged you to find some ways to connect with your spiritual self. Some ways that I do that: I use journaling, I use meditation. Meditation is key for me. And my meditations have transitioned over the years. So in the beginning, I meditated simply to relax. And now I meditate specifically to receive spiritual downloads and information from spirit. So I also use automatic writing, which is essentially allowing myself to sit down and write and not think about it. Just write what comes to me. Spending time in nature is a really great way for you to connect with your spiritual self. Particularly walking barefoot on the earth is a really, really great way for you to connect. Another thing I use, of course, you guys know that I'm the crystal lady, and so I love my crystals. And really the crystals aid me, particularly in my meditations. That's what I use them for. You can also use tools of divination. So if you are into reading cards, or if you're into rune stones, you can use tools. Also, there's bibliomancy. So a lot of people do this with the Bible, where they automatically flip the Bible open and point to a passage. That's called bibliomancy. And so that's one way that people receive divine messages. You can receive divine messages in prayer. You can receive divine messages simply by being still enough to receive it. So whatever works for you to connect with your spiritual self so that you're being led by spirit and not by your ego, that's going to help you get in alignment with your intention and get in alignment with your actions so that you can then manifest and attract whatever you wish to attract. So I hope that this encouraged you this Sunday afternoon, and I cannot wait until tomorrow. Of course, I'm coming back every single day for 30 days of mindset mastery and magical moments alongside Ashlyn Ray of Brown Girls Billionaire Gang. So if you're not following her, be sure to follow. And if you're not following me, go ahead and click that follow button up top. If you are in the midst of your spiritual awakening and you want to learn how to connect with spirit so that you can attract at will, you can manifest at will. Life doesn't have to be hard. You literally can attract every single thing that you want into your life. It's all a matter of mastering yourself. So if you are ready to take that step, please click the link above. I would love to speak with you. Call me or contact me for your free consultation, and I will see you here tomorrow. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.